What was your oh crap, I shouldn't be here moment? In college I wanted to learn to dance and I heard dance class was a great way to meet women. I signed up for jazz dance and was one of 3 guys in a class of 30. The girls thanked me for coming and I was stoked. The teacher walked in, grabbed a guy for a little demo and did this amazing routine. Everyone nodded and paired up and I was quickly grabbed by a hot girl. It was apparent after a few seconds that I had no idea what I was doing. Worse, the teacher grabbed me for another demo and I made a fool of myself on top of stepping on her toes. It turns out I was in the advanced class, not the beginner. I never went back again. I can feel my face getting red just from reading this. During my divorce I briefly stayed in a pretty rough part of town. $200 more for what used to be the shed of a 100-year-old house. A largely black neighborhood. I'm white. One day I found a small dog wandering around. It was clean and everything but no collar, so I'm going around knocking on some of the doors to see if anyone recognized the dog. I wander a little way down a side street and come across a couple of black gentlemen out in their yard. I asked if they recognized the dog. All they said was, "You wanna turn around and go back the way you came?" "Yes sirs, have a good day." I did reunite the dog with its owner. 6th grade. When visiting sports teams came to our school, the visiting females athletes would use the men's locker room to change. I was at school late for cross-country practice. After practice I realized I had forgotten something in my gym locker. I walked into the locker room, head down, and didn't realize the locker room was full of half-naked girls changing for some sporting event until I started to hear shrieks. First day of boxing in a dirty gym. The first lesson was free but it felt like I was surrounded by ex-prisoners. I was 14 and afraid. They all turned out to be good people and I did boxing for 7 years. One of them said something to me that really reassured me. The conversation went something like this. "Me. Everybody here could kick my butt, it's a little bit intimidating." "Him. You got it the wrong way. Everybody here could kick the butt of anybody that mess with you. This is not a dangerous place. It's one of the safest place you can be." This is a pretty cool story. I like nice people. I walked in on my boss banging one of the other employees on the table in his office. He had his pants around his ankles and she had her skirt hiked up and was sprawled out on the table. I walked in on them mid-thrust. My ex is black and we were at a wedding, and on the way back we decided to stop at a small kinda touristy town in the south with a few bars. So we get a hotel at the end of the street and start bar hopping. So when we get back to the hotel, we see a little flyer on our door inviting us to a breakfast the following morning. We're hungover and decide to attend to get free food before we leave. We get dressed and packed. I load up the car and we head to the breakfast. My girlfriend is the only non-white person there. A few people were wearing those KKK button-up shirts with all the white pride patches and stuff. Everyone just turned to look at us. Just like in the movies. We stumbled upon a white supremacy meeting or something, so we turned around and left. I was trying to pay off a parking ticket in a foreign country, Sweden, and wandered into what I thought was the waiting room. It was not. And it became painfully obvious I had wandered into their lunchroom when I noticed the cops eating and sitting around. I just got up and left. Heck, I'm from Sweden, and I didn't even know you could pay directly at the police station. Usually, we pay by money transfer, or, if we have cash and don't want it on OutRecord, directly by the roadside. No receipt. I did a long-term assignment in the UAE, so I decided to drive out of Dubai to go see some mountains around it. I'm driving around doing my thing. So all over the UAE are giant portraits of their royal family. I was driving around and noticed there were a lot of photos of a different royal family. I suddenly realized my GPS put me on a shortcut that goes through Oman. So I keep driving and approach a roadblock. I didn't have my passport with me because I was getting a new visa, so I just had a note from the authorities saying I was cool. I approached the machine gun wielding guard, explained my situation. He had a good laugh and welcomed me back to the UAE. You must have been like, Oman. I just crossed the border. Had to buy a part for my car, so a friend drove me to AutoZone. He waited in the car while I got the part. I came out and hopped in the car, only to see a somewhat concerned looking girl sitting next to me. She calmly told me, "I don't think you're supposed to be here." I replied. I agree, and nope the frick out of there. It was a seriously embarrassing situation, but she seemed calm and collected about it. Turns out a car identical to my friend's had pulled into the space next to his while I was inside, and I was just too oblivious to realize. I used to work for a steakhouse chain. I got used to their layout. Months later I'm at a location that's about 90% similar to the one I worked at, so I head to the restroom. I walk in and start washing my hands first. I had ribs, and I feel eyes on me. A mom with her 2 daughters. I say hey there and go back to washing my hands before it sinks in. Mom looks absolutely disgusted. I was about 5 beers into the evening, so I apologized and ran out of there. It took me about 2 minutes to realize you walked into the wrong bathroom. I was in NOLA for Mardi Gras in like '07. I had road trip there with a few buddies from college. We all stayed in the same hotel, so it wasn't uncommon that if we got lost we would just meet up later at the hotel. So this particular night I'm lost and I'm wandering down one of the less popular streets. It was easier to get served and find seating in these bars. So I find myself in this bar and about 3 big dudes walk in asking for some guy who was supposed to help set up PA equipment. I overheard and jokingly volunteered, and they accepted. They told me they'd give me some VIP passes to some clubs for helping them. It was easy work and didn't take long. We were setting up in a strip club. They asked if I wanted to stay and have some drinks before the show started. So I said sure. The talents started showing up and I immediately realized these were transgendered strippers. I'm no prude, but I felt my night had come to an end. But next thing I know the entertainment took a liking to me. They thought it was hilarious this chubby boy was here. They decided they wanted me to take part in the show. Okay, frick it. You only live once. They dressed me up all crazy and I spent the night bringing drinks to the entertainment where they would croon all over me. It was a great time. Eventually the night was over, so they wanted their costumes back. Unfortunately my clothes went missing. Wallet and all. I had to take a cab back to our hotel in my boxers, wake up my buddies to pay the cab and get me back in. It was the weirdest freaking night of my life. I regret nothing. New Orleans will take you for a wild ride. When I was in high school, a buddy of mine and I skipped school to drink and get high with some friends of his. I didn't know a single person there. The kid whose house it was had invited his girlfriend. We sat in a shed in his backyard getting stoned and playing quarters. After about 2 hours everyone was S-faced. I was sitting in the shed with one other dude and the kid whose house it was, with his girlfriend. They decided to frick right in front of us. After a minute or two the other guy got up and left the shed. I was so wasted that I sat there and watched for a good 10 minutes before realizing that I wasn't watching a pee. So I stumbled out and puked on his lawn. Happened to me once too. Just chilling in a friend's basement smoking weed and a guy and his girlfriend just start fricking in front of the group. Very confusing experience for 16-year-old very stoned me. 8-year-old me walked into my uncle's room in my grandmother's estate after I hear sounds coming from it. The noises stop as soon as I open the door, and my uncle, from the bed, just gives me a death glare and says, "Your uncle is taking a nap with partner's name here. Go away. I'll talk to you later." I turned on my heel, shut the door, and nope the frick out of there. So yeah, I didn't realize it back then, but that was the time I walked in on my uncle having gay sex. I tend to do my exercise at night, as I like the cool, quiet and darkness, and don't like people looking at me. I was running through a small park in a residential neighborhood, turned a corner, and was faced with the annual congregation of the cats. There must have been about 50 of them, sitting and laying over the lawn as if it were a kiddie amphitheater. They all turned and stared at me with their bright, lantern eyes until I got creeped out, turned around and walked away. I'm not quite sure what I walked in on, but I feel as if it was something no human was meant to see. You could have stayed, learned their rituals, and joined their tribe, eventually contributing immeasurably both to their society and to mankind's understanding of them. But no, you chickened out. A few weeks ago, I was headed home from work, which normally I can hop on the interstate and go north around the seedier part of town. However, due to a particular nasty traffic accident, I ended up in what many people in my area consider straight up hood, sitting at stoplights behind a car with a couple of I'm sure fine gentlemen, with another car just to the left of them, with another group of upstanding citizens. Next thing I know, I hear these two groups yelling back and forth as I pray for the stoplight to turn green and let me proceed on my way home. When suddenly one of the first car's patrons sitting in the passenger seat reaches out his window and up over the roof of his car, holding what looked like a 9mm pistol. All I could think was crap frick. Get me the frick out of here. Suddenly the light turned green and we all proceeded without incident. I promptly found a new route home and a new pack of underwear. Sobering up in a legit crack house, sitting on a mattress watching The Wire with the locals while my friend banged a lady of the night in an unfurnished room upstairs as a white middle class teenager. You sound like a good time. My brother and I built an app for Coachella that was also useful for planning and privies. This meant we were given production passes, photo passes and desk space to work during the event. We didn't abuse them too much, but AC/DC is better seen in the VIP, or the photo pit, than in behind 10,000 people. At one point we needed to talk to our contact in the trailers behind main stage. Nobody stopped us with our god level access. Suddenly we're in the center of hundreds of intimidatingly dressed people, men in tuxes, women in gowns. We are in the green room during Drake, Kanye, the Kardashians, Madonna, and entourages of former linebackers ready to kill any paparazzi that moved. There was my brother and I, cameras in hand, scuzzed out in sweaty t-shirts and shorts. We backed out like we'd happened upon a mama bear. To add to how surreal this was, I am a middle-aged, balding chubby guy who had spent the prior 6 months as a stay-at-home dad in Montana. Last Tuesday in school, I accidentally fell asleep during second period. I woke up and I knew something was wrong because I was surrounded by people I have never seen before. I checked the clock and it was 10:44 and I had been asleep for an hour and missed a majority of my third period class. I panicked, got up, and walked to math. I didn't get in trouble, but I still feel bad for what happened. It's hard not falling asleep in study hall now. I've witnessed teachers in college excuse class silently and let their next class in without disturbing a sleeper. I was spending the night with a friend of mine in the 5th grade. It was on that night that his mom found out about his dad's affair. Awkward. I wilder jumped out the window and hauled butt out of there. After I quit playing football, which I had done for 7 years, I decided to try lacrosse. I went to some training clinics for a few weeks and was decent, but still not capable of being any good on a team. My mom went online and signed me up for what was supposed to be a scrimmage for all levels in my age group, about 15 and 16-year-olds, thinking it would be good for someone like me to get a feel for what a game would be like. And she made it seem like it was going to be a place for other beginners like me to get some experience. She was wrong. She was very, very wrong. She had signed me up for a house league that some of you may know as True Lacrosse. And although it's a house league, it's very competitive according to my friends who play lacrosse. My mom was busy or something and couldn't be there to watch me play, so she dropped me off and told me to call her when I needed to be picked up. So here I am, by myself, getting thrown into a full-fledged game when I'd only been playing for about a month. Luckily for me, one of the coaches was the same guy who ran all of the clinics that I went to, but he didn't recognize me with my gear on and put me on the opening face-off. I didn't protest, not wanting to look like a P, but came off after about a minute and a half and went right up to him with a "dude, what the frick" kind of face. He finally recognized me and was like, "Oh crap, I didn't know it was you. Just do your best, you'll be fine." I was not fine. I was laughed at for failing to scoop the ball a good 4 times in a row. I got cross-checked, slashed in the face, tripped, yelled at by my teammates, you name it. They knew I was a scrub and took advantage of that fact at every opportunity. Being a linebacker, I managed to lay 2 or 3 real good checks, but they went pretty much unnoticed. Here comes the worst part. The clock of the final quarter or period or whatever, I don't remember or care, was winding down and I commented to the only nice teammate how we were almost done and I could get a good meal once we got done when he said, "Dude, this is a double header." What? My mom picked up me after the second game and I cried in the car on the way home and in my room that night. I never played lacrosse again. She had signed me up for a house league that some of you may know as True Lacrosse. I played lacrosse in high school and even got a few offers from some no-name D3 schools, but I don't frick with True Lacrosse. took a middle seat for my first class, Intro to Astronomy, when I ended up spending 75 minutes in a lecture on Intro to Psych. I felt that leaving the class would have been too awkward given that it was an auditorium with about 200 students in it. In high school, I went with a friend to meet a guy she was texting in the next town over. We pull up and instantly the feeling of regret overcomes me. The fella answered the door and we come inside. His house, which he shares with 2 other dudes, is her old daycare. There's a freaking mural of butterflies and kids frolicking painted on the wall. There are cubbies being used as shelves and curtains strung about separating the rooms. He didn't say one word about IT. No one did. Later that night, my friend left me alone with him and he kissed me. He tasted like NyQuil. Everything about that is just awkward. Dang. Glad you survived. Halloween was coming up and every year I go to Halloween Haunt with friends. This particular year no one was around, so as I was sitting in a local strip club I asked a girl I sometimes got dances from if she wanted to go. She said sure, if her other female friend could come too. I thought score. I get to go to a Halloween event at an amusement park with 2 hot strippers. Well, when I got there I was introduced to her friend, a third girl, and 4 really big, thugged out black guys. The one guy was really pee off and yelling at the girl I'd asked in French. For about an hour we'd all awkwardly hit the rides while the girl and this guy would argue in French. I asked her female friend what was up and she told me those 2 were a couple and she couldn't explain who I was or why I was hanging out with them. He thought she was cheating on him with me. This was a lie. I finally figured out 2 hours and I was basically hanging out with 3 strippers and their pimps. And this one pimp wasn't happy that she'd treated hanging out with me that night as a legit hangout and not a paid date. Awkward. Strippers ain't hoes. Strippers don't have pimps. You were hanging with hoes. Went to support a friend at a narcotics meeting before I could drive. Found a ride to this place about an hour and a half from my home. Real sketchy part of town. The meeting ended about 9 PM and he'd told me his mom could give me a ride home, which must have been a lie because she refused. So I figured I'd wait around since there was supposed to be another meeting at 10 PM. And that would give me time to figure things out. But nobody showed up. I waited till 11, 11:30, 12 and not a soul entered the building, which seemed weird since it was just left unlocked. Me inside. I started to really freak since my phone was on 8 or 9% battery and I had no money, being 16. Tried calling friends, parents, nobody answered. I left to go to a gas station and was stopped by police. Told them my situation in a noticeably shaken demeanor and was cuffed and put in the back of the squad car. I don't remember what happened, but they let me out and drove off without helping. A friend eventually called me back when I was down to like 3% phone battery and picked me up and took me home. We proceeded to get stoned and have a great rest of the night. 7th grade. I sit in the back of the class due to extreme anxiety, and I sit behind the super ghetto kid. Keep in mind we have the big lab tables that sit 2 at a time. His friend walks over behind me, takes off his shoe, grabs my science book from me, pulls a baggie of C and a razor blade out of the tongue of his shoe and starts busting out lines for him and the dude in front of me. The other guy walks back to the other seat at my desk and says be look out. I had never engaged in a conversation with him previous to this situation, and had definitely never seen C before. I see you've since upgraded from lookout. My friend and I were at Jenkins 16 and heard of this amazing after party going on, so we decided to check it out. One open bar beer later, we look around and realize everyone was wearing wristbands and the CEO of the entire event was making a toast to the head honchos, the big people. We went with it, ended up talking about futunery P with the seminar coordinator. Good night. Sounds like how Ray ended up in the Halo 3 team's photo. With a group of college friends on spring break and we walk into a bar on Canadian side of Niagara Falls and it's empty except for a group of guys sitting at a table having a meeting and they look like they were straight out of Goodfellas. They all stop talking and everyone stares at us silently and, at least in my mind, you could hear a pin drop until the one guy waves us in. We got a pint and played a game or 2 of darts and left. When I was younger, about 14 years old, I was in one of the fancier airline lounges. I was in an Islamic country at the time. I was looking for the toilet after drinking pretty much unlimited soda with my younger brother and I had to pee badly. So after quickly looking for the toilet, I rushed in and looking for the urinals. It was the weirdest toilet I have ever seen, but I really had to go. There wasn't any urinal or stalls at all, but just one big long basin that I imagine you could pee in. Without much hesitation I peed. About half stream, my younger brother told it was their praying room for Muslims. As soon as he told me, he laughed his butt off. I couldn't stop. My bladder was still full. I begged him to block the entrance while I finished. All he could manage was stood outside the door containing his laughter. As soon as I was done, a couple of guys entered and I pretty much flew out of there, my brother still laughing his butt off. I came back to my high school in the evening from a track and field meet at a nearby school. My ride wasn't there yet and I needed to release a day's worth of pee. Luckily, the school theater was open for some event. Unfortunately, the men's room was locked, but the women's was unlocked. I didn't have much time to think, so I ran in, locked myself in one of the stalls, and of course, halfway through my pee, a group of girls walk in. At this point, I had to switch a seated position, so no one would suspect me. Once they got into the stalls, I booked the frick out of there. I was off-roading in the northwoods of Wisconsin, at night, in my truck. I had been driving for about a half hour, and had passed more forks in the trail than I care to count. Then I come up on something that I shouldn't have. There was a rotting old shack between two rusted out camper trailers. They look like they've been sitting in the woods for 30 years. Then I notice the light is on in one of the trailers. I noped out of there as fast as reverse gear could take me. I didn't find a spot to turn around for at least a half mile. This is awesome. When I was about 12, I'd oftentimes just hang out at the electronics section of Walmart while my parents did the shopping. I was there one day, just minding my own business, playing the store demo of Donkey Kong Country and looking at gaming magazines, when the store loss prevention made a beeline for another teen who was standing next to me. "You need to come with us," they told him. "We have you on camera switching price stickers on CDs." The guy denied it and started getting visually upset and audibly louder. The loss prevention guys then started threatening to call the police if the guy didn't come with them and tell them who his parents were. I was a pretty sheltered kid and had never seen anything like it before. I was worried that they would accuse me of being in on it, so I scurried over to the magazine aisle and pretended to read X-Men comics. Then my mom yelled at me for not being in the right spot when she came to get me. I was 14 at a college party. I had tagged along with a cousin and was sitting in the kitchen drinking a beer when I hear a commotion and see blue lights from the front. I then hear gunshots and get a little closer to the living room, and there's two peoples who have been shot by a guy who is standing there with a gun to his head. I take off at a full sprint out the back door and I could hear several more shots when I was running. Hour later, I've posted up at the gas station up the street when my cousin calls me. Turns out he was in the living room when crap went down. He comes and grabs me to take me home and explains what happened. Turns out the guy was really drunk and on some drugs and had taken his ex-girlfriend hostage. Cops showed up and went lights and sirens to corral the crowd outside. Guy realized that the cops were there and shot his ex and her friend. He was holding the gun to his head when another guy tackled him. There were a few more shots. The crazy guy and the guy who tackled him both got shot and another guy got grazed. A few rounds got lodged in the wall and the ceiling and the TV got shot. Cops kicked in the door a few seconds later. Crazy guy went to jail, after the hospital, and everyone survived. Another guy got arrested for knocking the crap out of one of the cops because the girl's friend who got shot was his girlfriend and he blamed the cops for getting her shot. I passed out at a party and my friends thought it would be nice if I could sleep in the bathtub. Few hours passed by and I woke up to my leg, which hurt a lot due to staying in one position for few hours. So I noticed I didn't had a top on and soon recalled that we played strip poker before I passed out, and there was something else, weird noises, moaning and kissing sounds. Oh crap. I peeked over the bathtub and there was a couple having sex on the toilet. So eventually I fell asleep again and the couple didn't even know that I was there. It was too awkward to disturb them and I was still super drunk and dizzy, so I passed out again. Gives a whole new meaning to tub geril. Party in HS got busted by the cops. The cops were knocking on the door shouting sheriff's office. People started jumping out the windows and running for it, and someone sitting on the porch when the cops were there opened the door for the cops to come in. I was standing there thinking if I should ditch a huge bag of weed I had just bought that night or not. I took a chance and kept it in my pocket. The cops came in, and the cop ended up telling me and my 2 friends to leave and not to come back. All of us had weed on us. We walked past the cops really slowly and scared. Kind of like in Shaun of the Dead when they pretend to be zombies and walk through the street full of zombies to make it to the bar. Once we turned around the corner we celebrated on how class it came to us getting arrested for being underage with alcohol everywhere and weed smoke in the air and all of that. Close right. Had me confused for longer than I care to admit. I once stepped out on the road with a pizza in hand, stopped a car, opened the door and sat down in the passenger seat just to realize that even though it was the same model with the same letters on the plate, it was not my friend coming to pick me up. I'll never forget the look on the poor man's face. 40% disbelief, 30% wariness and 30% pizza. I remember mumbling wrong car before quickly walking away and calling my friend to pick me up at a different spot because the previous one has been compromised. This is amazing. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.